everyone. I'm Senator Michael Roderick, Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Revenue. I'm joined by my House Co-Chair, Chairman Jay Kaufman, and a number of my colleagues from the Great General Corps. We have Representative Tim Toomey, Representative Jim Macero, Representative Ryan Fatman, Representative Chris Fallon, Representative Randy Hunt, Representative Paul Schmidt. Thank you all for being here. A couple housekeeping rules. We ask that everyone please silence your cell phones. We ask that you keep your testimony to not more than 3 minutes. If you do have testimony in writing, please submit that testimony and do not read from that testimony. We have plenty of members of staff here from the Joint Committee that will help you with that. We do hear bills in the order at which they were posted, and we also allow the courtesy of taking our colleagues out of turn to testify. The first bill before us is House 3713, filed by Representative Mark Romano, an act relative to school safety and security. Good afternoon, Representative. Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
We do have sign-in sheets for anyone wishing to testify. We ask that you sign in so we can ensure that we have all the information available to us.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for hearing my bill today. I would like to introduce you to Sergeant Bill West of the Border Police Department. Bill and I, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
We met several months ago, and really in the wake of the violence we've been seeing in our schools, we got together with an idea that we think makes a lot of sense for our communities to how to add further protections within our school departments in collaboration with our municipal police department. And I'd like to say that I was the brainchild of this, but I'm not. Bill was the one who approached me with some of these ideas, and we worked together to craft it. And the context of the bill would be that in collaboration with school superintendents, school departments, and our police department, we would allow the police department, the police officers in the community to be able to volunteer time in the schools as a supplemental security to the existing security in the schools in a volunteer basis. Now, we all understand how busy everyone's lives are, and so we wanted to provide some incentive to our officers, and so there is that ability to have a tax incentive to do so. But we think this is a great way of being able to put police officers in our schools at no additional cost to our school departments or our municipal budgets, and really at the same time significantly add to potential security measures within the schools. I'd like to Bill to give a little more detail as to details around the bill.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me, first of all. I think this is a very important bill. It's important for the citizens of Massachusetts and for the citizens of the country. I think with this bill going forward would help save many a child in these terrible times. Back in 1764, the Pontiac Rebellion in Pennsylvania, that was the first known school shooting. In that school, Enoch Brown and 10 children died in the school shooting. Ever since then, it's been more frequent and more disastrous every single time. After the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, back in December 2012, it prompted me to go forward to Mark and bring forth some ideas to try to stop these terrible acts. There was a terribly devastating act. 20 children were killed and 6 others injured in that shooting. And since then, it's just continued. Back in December of 2013, almost a year to that date, there was another shooting, and that was in Arapahoe County in Colorado. There, a beautiful young girl was shot in the head. She was only 17 years old. She had her whole life to live. She was shot in the head, and somebody else was shot. Thankfully, the response by the school resource officer, who was armed, potentially put that to quell that disturbance right away. and that's what the sheriff in that county said, that they, because the school resource officer was armed and was responding, that stopped the threat right there and then, and the individual that was the shooter killed himself. It's just continued on and on. Denial, we can't be in denial. These incidents are going to continue. And Colonel Dave Grossman, who I spoke to, who is a world-renowned expert on school shootings, backs my bill 100%, and I have some documentation from him that I'd like to share with the board at some point in time. I'd like to thank all you. I think this is very, very important. I think it's a way to get around the cost of the cities and towns, no further cost to them, while putting extra officers in our schools to protect our children who are most dear to us. I want to thank Representative Mark Lombardo for all he's done. I want to thank you for hearing. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Sergeant.
Thank you, sir.
Representative. Any questions from members of the committee? Representative Fleming.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, through you. Thank you for the idea. I think that's very difficult. Also wanted to just point one thing out so that you're thinking about this as the bill progresses, and that is, like other refundable credits, if it's a refundable credit, you have to report that on your next year's federal income tax return. So be aware that there may not be a cost to the community for this volunteering, but if you're in the 25% tax bracket and you pay $8,000, which is that credit limit, you'll be on the hook for paying federal taxes of $2,000 for that if you're in the 25% tax bracket. So just think about that, because there may be ways to deal with that in a different fashion than putting somebody up to a volunteer activity that they find out a year down the line that they have to pay federal income tax on.
Thank you, and leave it up to a CPA to point out something very, very astute. And I'm very willing to work with the board to affect this and take those ideas, work with this committee to make it stronger and maybe clean up some of those potential areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from the members of the committee? Seeing none, I thank both of you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Any further testimony on House 3713?
Thank you, Chair.
Seeing none, we'll call that part of the hearing closed. Representative Madden has joined us. Representative, you wish to testify?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
Good afternoon.
members of the committee, good afternoon. And I will speak to the gentleman to my far left, but to your far right, Representative Hunt's bill, House 3827. He's always interested in how people tax dollars are spent, and he does it for a living. And he's been good enough to the district to bring something back that will actually serve the whole Commonwealth. This is in regards to having a simple procedure is checking a box and putting a number next to it as to what you would want to have as a tax deductible donation to the Cultural Council of Massachusetts. I think he has done a terrific job bringing this bill forward. I know he can talk to you much more about it, but it really is very simple. And we in our budget have put a great deal of money, not nearly enough in my opinion, towards tourism, and towards these facilities that bring a great deal of interest and money back to the Commonwealth. So this is something that Representative Hunt came up with, and I think it's an excellent idea. It just adds another box for people to be able to check it and give money to one of their favorite causes. So with that, I wholeheartedly support the bill and would hope that you move it as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Representative. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Well, now we're going to call Bill House 3729, followed by Representative Folly Bouvier. An act increasing the time in which real property owned by the Central Berkshire County Development Corporation may be exempt from taxation. We have no one signed up to testify on the bill. Is anyone wishing to testify in House 3729? Seeing none, we'll call that part of the hearing closed. House 3799, filed by Representative Chairman Antonio Cabral, an act to protect historic buildings from fire. Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Kaufman, Chairman Roberts, members of the committee. Thank you very much for taking out a turn I appreciate it. And with me, I have a constituent of mine, actually, from the city of New Bedford, that will present testimony on this bill. Actually, this bill came about discussions and conversations with Mr. Whitten, and then with my office, we developed some of the language. What the bill does, it addresses an area which I believe should be addressed. We have not addressed this in the past, is to do with the fire suppression systems, historical buildings. I'm sure all of you have those buildings in your district. We have many of those in my district, in the city of New Bedford in particular, especially around the historical district in downtown. As you know, many of these buildings are old. They do not have sprinkler systems. And this bill would create an incentive to allow the owners, be an individual or a corporation or an LLC or any other entity, to actually go in and establish and put in fire suppression systems in order to protect those buildings. We've had, over the years, a number of those buildings burned down precisely because there was no ability to have protection for them up front. This bill would establish a tax credit of 50%, up to $10,000 of the renovation or on the installation of the suppression system on either the individual or the corporation or entity that would be the owner of the building on their state income tax. That's sort of the general idea. It would follow all the other historical regulations, not just because the owner thinks it's a historical building, because it is designated and follows the rules of the state as an historical building, then it would qualify for this incentive. So I hope the committee reports this bill out favorably. We think it's, in addition to protect these buildings from fire, it is also an opportunity to create incentives for the owners of these buildings, especially, but we have some of these buildings are moving up to code, and some of them house businesses, especially in my community, they actually house businesses. Right now, as you know, according to the code, the sprinkler code, if you go into a building, we have that building, if you reach certain thresholds, then you are mandated to do a fire suppression system anyway. And as you know, it's a very costly proposition, so sometimes it stops individuals and from actually investing and rehabbing those buildings to start off with. This way we'll give them that opportunity to do that, so it will be a great economic impact as well for our communities. Also, I filed with you a support letter from the organization Whaley New Bedford, which is the Waterfront Historical League in New Bedford. They are very supportive, and they've been in the business of remodeling old historical buildings and preserving historical buildings in the city of New Bedford in particular. So, having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Marty Whitney. Marty, present yourself for the committee.
So, my name is Marty Whitman. I'm a member of the Whaling History Alliance, which is a support group of the Whaling National Historical Park in New Bedford. And that was the inspiration for us, because we've had several fires in that district with demolished buildings. Two of the buildings were restored, but they were all restored with tremendous millions of dollars of state and federal funding. And Whaling's were the leads in one of them. The other lead person was Ben Markey, who restored them. So just want to give you a map of the district and an outline where the buildings have been destroyed. They're now empty lots. And they're put in light pink in the district, the area where there are some buildings that are now at risk. They're just, the buildings in the district are mostly wooden buildings built in the 1800s. So I just wanted to show you what they look like and you can understand the risk, because they're all abutting each other. So this would be on North Water Street. These are other buildings on North Water Street. They're just two-story buildings. They're historical, built in the 1800s. And it's, if they were destroyed, it would be economically unfeasible, not feasible to restore them, but they're part of the historic park, so they're kind of part of the tourist attractions. They're really, you know, pieces of antiquity. They house small businesses. These aren't big businesses, maybe a coffee shop, or there's a green supply place in there, but they're small businesses. And they're not really financially big businesses. These are the two buildings that were totally destroyed, but restored with state and federal funds. I'm talking about millions of dollars took to restore them. The only reason they survived is they had masonry exteriors. And these are the empty lots where buildings were wooden buildings. And now they're just, this is a park. And the other empty lots is now the entrance to the Whaling Museum in the city. And those were, the buildings that were destroyed are more like the wooden buildings that appear on North Water Street and William Street. And there's also been submitted a letter from the president of the Whaling History Alliance explaining in greater detail the benefits of this. But we think that we'll keep these businesses, because these are all privately owned buildings that are in the Whaling Historical National Park. So to put them in, it's going to be their dollars. They would just be given a little incentive to put them in, and then benefits the entire district. It also keeps them in business, paying taxes, and keeping employed in that area. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lippin, and thank you very much. I'm very familiar with the buildings in the area, and I want to thank you very much for all the hard work that you and Whale and the representative and others have done to really just turn around downtown New Bedford and the National Park down there. So thank you very much. I would like to offer to get these photos back. Do you want us to keep these, or these are?
I would like you to keep them.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to not just make sure you walk off without them, without offering them back. All right, thank you very much for all you've done. Any questions from members? Okay. Seeing none, I thank you very much. Any further testimony in House 3799? Seeing none, we will call that part of the hearing closed. House 3812, filed by Representative Speaker Pro Tem Haddad, an act to exempt over-the-counter medicines and dietary supplements from the sales tax. No one signed up to testify in House 3812. Any testimony from the audience? Seeing none, we will call that part of the hearing closed. House 3827, filed by Representative Hunt, that we've heard testimony from Representative Madanon, an act encouraging cultural rural council funding. Representative Madden? Hunt, I know that.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Chairman and the rest of the committee, there are 45 co-signers to this bill. A couple of quick points. The bill creates a line item on page 3 of the personal state Massachusetts income tax return, where there are already 6 organizations that can receive voluntary contributions. It would add to that. We heard earlier this year, actually last year, from Treasurer Grossman about a financial literacy check the box. It's the same type of thing that would be added to the tax return. You would be able to put down any amount that you wanted to contribute to the Mass Cultural Council. The key to this bill, however, is that all of the money that is contributed to the fund that is called out for in the bill will be redistributed back to the cultural councils of that that taxpayer's town. And at first, when we filed this, I had it coming back to the counties and then being redistributed. But since then, Corey Atkins, who's the chairman of our tourism joint committee, the House chairman, she and I agreed that it would be better if we had it directed back to the cultural councils that deal with a town or several towns. And so I've provided Ms. Rigolo the change in the wording that we suggested, that, and it's very slight, to make that happen. The second big point is it's a no incremental cost bill for the state. Other than having somebody, there's no incremental cost to this, but laying out the extra check the boxes on the tax return. The DOR already has a mechanism for identifying all of those voluntary contributions. All of those would go directly into the fund, along with a list to the MCC, which would indicate from which towns the contributions were made. And the last thing I would say is this. People have come up to me and said, well, why can't people just write a check to the local cultural council? Why can't they do that? And they can do that. But here's the thing. First, you need to find out where you're going to send the check. And a lot of local cultural councils, well, almost all of them, they have no staff. They have no manned phone number. So you have to have the information. So then you write out a check and you put your 50 cents on it, which is what the postage is going to be by the time this goes into effect. And you mail that check in. Then they have to have some volunteer that sends a receipt back to you, which you have to keep for 7 years just in case you get audited for making that, for that year's tax return, and they might question any contributions that you made, charitable contributions. So now you're going through all of that process, whereas on a Sunday afternoon, when you're filling out your tax return or doing TurboTax, or you can mention this to a tax practitioner, I'd like to put $20 to the Mass Cultural Fund. And you do that in the stroke of a pen, it's done. That's your documentation for your deduction on the next year's federal return. It's all very simple. And this important piece, the cultural community could get behind this and create an ad campaign for tax season to say, don't forget us. Put down your $10 or $50 or $100 or whatever you can give. It's this simple. Write it down, done. And that, if you have a refund coming, it just gets reduced from that refund. Very simple. If you owe money, you're going to owe that much more when you pay your taxes. So it's very, very simple. And I think based on these other funds that don't advertise, that are bringing in from $100,000 a year up to about $500,000 a year, if the communities got behind this, we could easily see this fund take in $1 million or $2 million. And $2 million is kind of a magic number because that's how much the Cultural Council funding has lost and still needs to be made up somehow for them to get back to where they were about 5 years ago. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I thank you very much for your testimony. Any further testimony on House 3827? Seeing none, we will call that part of the hearing closed. House 3840, filed by Representative John Warren, an act relative to job creation in life science research and development. Representative. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Please feel free.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rodriguez and Chairman Crofton. With me from AstraZeneca, I have Alice Pomponio, who's head of North American Science Affairs, and Ron Pollock, who's the Assistant Treasurer and Senior Manager for State Tax. I'm here today to support House Bill 3840, an act relative to creation in life sciences research and development. House 3840 seeks to clarify an eligibility definition in the state's life science research and development sales tax exemption law. In order to retain and attract life sciences and bio-research and development companies to be here in Massachusetts, we put in place a sales tax exemption on the products they purchase in the course of bio, life science, research, and development. AstraZeneca is a large research and development facility with a location in my district of Waltham. AstraZeneca's $200 million Waltham facility employs more than 650 workers and continues to grow. At this site, they focus every day on cutting-edge oncology and infectious disease research. Life science and bio R&D is a critical piece of our economy here in Massachusetts and in my district. AstraZeneca continues to be a big investor in Massachusetts research and development due to the current wording of the definitions portion of the law. AstraZeneca is not eligible for research and development sales tax exemption because they are globally structured as a limited partnership. As of now, limited partnerships are not recognized as eligible entities in the definition of the Massachusetts law. Thus, AstraZeneca is not able to claim annual estimated $1 million in research and development sales tax exemption for all equipment, raw materials, and other tangible property purchased for purposes of R&D. All of these other mass-based biotechnology corporations that conduct life sciences research and development are able to and do take advantage of this R&D sales tax exemption every day in Massachusetts. House Bill 3840 seeks to amend the state's R&D sales tax law to allow for our ability to access the life science exemption for R&D. This is an important industry in our region. It creates good, well-paying jobs while finding medicines and cures to improve quality of life and save lives. AstraZeneca has expanded its Waltham R&D presence in the last few years. They added 50 R&D positions in 2013 and are set to expand their Cambridge neuroscience team in 2014. Maintaining and growing the R&D presence here in Massachusetts has significant positive economic outcomes for our state and our area. Purchase of goods and services from vendors, partnerships with our academic and teaching hospitals that create other new jobs and higher revenue receipts for our communities and state. The company competes with other similar clusters around the country in a world to attract these jobs and this research to our state. It is imperative that we work to set sound state policy that allows this industry to grow and thrive and to continue to help the people of Massachusetts. This bill is simple. It's about creating a level playing field. We as a state policy chose to help build our life sciences and bio industry in Massachusetts by putting in place the R&D sales tax exemption. This bill simply clarifies the definition of the law to ensure that all companies that are doing life sciences R&D are eligible for the exemption. This bill allows for the further investment in jobs in the research and development field, which would continue to grow. This would be a tremendous financial benefit for Massachusetts. I will turn it over now to Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. So good afternoon, Chairman Kaufman, Chairman Rodrigues, committee members and staff. As mentioned before, I'm Alice Maloney. I head Science Affairs for North American International for AstraZeneca, and I'm joined by Ron Pollock, who's our assistant treasurer and senior manager for sales tax. As mentioned before, House 3840, an act relative to job creation and life sciences, research and development, seeks to clarify an eligibility definition in the state's life sciences sales tax exemption law. And I think the legislature and the state correctly recognized the enormous potential for life sciences R&D in the Commonwealth when it granted the sales tax exemption. And under the law, it basically exempts the sales tax for those goods and products purchased that go directly to supporting R&D activities within the life sciences sector. It was created to spur innovation, investment, job creation in the life sciences, and today Massachusetts is a national leader in the life sciences R&D, and our biotech sector continues to grow. I feel to mention that I also serve on the board at the Mass Biotech Council. Due to the current wording, we as AstraZeneca, structured as a limited partnership, are not eligible for the R&D sales tax exemption. We don't believe that this is intentional by any means, and we're here to ask for this to be clarified in the law to remedy the issue. All of the other Massachusetts biotech corporations are able to take advantage of the sales tax exemption. So just so you know, AstraZeneca, as mentioned before, has a significant presence in Waltham. We spend approximately $15 million a year in equipment, consumables, and other materials at our R&D facility in Waltham. Being located close to leading cutting-edge companies in analytical instrumentation, laboratory supplies, is critical for us to run a world-class discovery laboratory here in the Commonwealth. These purchases would equate to a gross annualized sales tax exemption of approximately $1 million. And we should note that AstraZeneca would only realize this incremental tax savings if we continue to invest in the state by continuing to operate our labs and sustain our purchases while conducting future R&D. As we mentioned before, we are a global R&D organization, so this is our world headquarters for infectious disease research. It's also where we pursue a significant amount of our personalized healthcare research for oncology, and it's our hope that we will make cancer a manageable chronic disease instead of one that's fatal for many people today. On-site, we have about 650 jobs. We have $90 million in payroll. It's about a $192 million complex with 320,000 square feet of lab space and sits on 66 acres of very sensitive, environmentally sensitive land. It's a LEED certified building, and it's been recognized as a prime example of environmentally sensitive development by the Cambridge Water Board and the Conservation Commission. And we generate about $17 million spent in local utilities, taxes, and services. As mentioned before, we have added about 50 R&D positions in 2013. We're set to expand our Cambridge neuroscience facility as well in 2014. In addition, we have a 200-person manufacturing facility in Westboro and the 40-person neuroscience facility in Cambridge. The key thing here is that we really value the Massachusetts life sciences community, and we have entered into significant collaborations here in the Commonwealth with local companies such as Moderna and Vine Therapeutics, and teaching hospitals like Mass General and Tufts. By making our science and compounds available to these groups, we've actually stimulated their growth in the partner organizations. Lastly, we want to mention that we're very proud to support the AstraZeneca Hope Lodge in Jamaica Plain. This is a result of our collaboration with the American Cancer Society, and it allows cancer patients and their families to stay at the Hope Lodge free of charge while they receive treatment at some of the world's premier hospitals located here in the Commonwealth. I believe that the staff and perhaps yourselves have received, in addition to my written and oral testimony, but also testimony and support from the Mass Biotech Council, from the Associated Industries of Massachusetts, and the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation. We work very closely with these three organizations in this overall effort. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. You can testify or?
Just here in case
Any
anybody has a
questions?
question.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for your commitment to Massachusetts. We very much appreciate AZ's commitment here in Massachusetts, so thank you for that. Questions, Representative Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I echo your thanks to the company. I suppose there's a tax benefit to being here as a limited partnership?
No, it's limited partnership, AstraZeneca Pharmaceutical Allocation, I call it AZPLP for short, has 4 corporate partners. Those corporate partners are fully taxed at the corporate tax rate. So there is no benefit for it. The reason for a partnership is back in 2000, it was the most efficient and expedient way for Astra, which was a Swedish company, and Zeneca, a UK company, to be able to do business in the US when they merged. And that partnership allows us, again, to do the collaborations that we're continuing to develop more efficiently. And that's why we stay as a partnership as opposed to trying to restructure. We would have to basically reinvent the wheel and redo every agreement that we have currently out there.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, sure.
I apologize for my late arrival. Could you tell us a little bit about, and I apologize if this was already covered, kind of the research that you're doing into infectious disease at AstraZeneca in terms of, are other places doing similar research, or have they moved on to more chronic illnesses, which would seem to be more business generating on a regular basis?
So we have a small organization in Waltham, but again, our global leadership resides in Waltham for infectious disease. We pursue it on a number of different levels, but primarily through anti-infectives, so small molecule antimicrobials, or what you might consider hospital-based or community-acquired infections. We also have a small program in neglected tropical disease research as well. So this is an area that is considered very high risk, expensive because it is similar to any other pharmaceutical development pathway, very low returns. So it is often abandoned by other large pharmaceutical manufacturers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Seeing none, I thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to introduce new members of the committee that have joined us in Japan. Just Representative Dan Cullinane, Representative Kate Hogan, and Representative Martin Kuzak. Thank you all very much for being here. Any further testimony on House 3840? We have no one signed up to testify. Anyone wishing to testify in House 3840? Seeing none, we will call that part of the hearing closed. Senate 1872, filed by Senator Brian Joyce, an act authorizing the town of Milton to assess an additional amount of real estate and personal property taxes. Anyone wishing to testify on Senate 1872? Seeing none, we will call that part of the hearing closed. Senate 1910, filed by Senator Bruce Tarr, an act authorizing the town of Ipswich to grant certain retroactive real estate abatements. Anyone wishing to testify on Senate 1910? Seeing none, we will call that part of the hearing closed. Senate 1980, filed by Senator Bruce Tarr, an act relative to income tax applicable to Diana Manning. Anyone? Welcome, Diana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Sorry,
being here.
Senator Tarr,
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you and all of you. I came to put in a request for the rebatement of our, a portion of our 1986 Department of Revenue taxes to the Commonwealth. We had an unusual situation happen. My late husband was the bureau chief for Newsweek in South Africa, and in June of '86, South Africa said, we'd really rather you weren't here. So they deported him, and of course all of us, and we ended up in Massachusetts where Rick had gotten a book contract to write a book. And when we went to pay our taxes that year, we found out that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was going to tax us for the entire year, even though we only lived here for 90 days. So we made the application to, have that waived. It was not. We also, of course, had to pay federal income taxes because we came back early from, living overseas. Anyway, the IRS did refund us fully our taxes for 1986, but the Commonwealth chose not to do that. So for several, well, more than several, for many years after that, I, would put in requests and send letters, could you please do the right thing, gentlemen and ladies, and give us the portion of taxes back that we did not earn in the Commonwealth, nor were even in the country. And I never, got any response. And then, about 2.5 years ago, I happened to be doing some research online, and I find out the bill had been repealed that required people to pay what was called the one-step bill, and I apologize, I thought Senator Tarr's office might be here with the file, that charged us for those taxes. So basically, that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and I hope you will pay us those taxes.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I thank you very much for your testimony.
You're very welcome. Thanks for your time.
Is it? Thank you. Any further testimony on Senate 1980? Seeing none, we will call that part of the hearing closed. House 3847, filed by initiative petition, an act to repeal the 2013 gas tax indexing. And we have Representative Deal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Bachman, Chairman Roderick, members of the committee, staff. Thank you for having me, and it's an honor to represent the hundreds of volunteers who collected signatures and over 120,000 people who signed the ballot initiative to repeal the gas tax limit to CPI. I think I've already submitted to you, members is a copy of the bipartisan letter of support from both House and Senate members, which you should have with you as well. And I'll try to keep my testimony brief, as I'm sure there are several people here to testify. So to begin with, my colleagues and I, we last year passed a tax increase package of $500 million, which I'd like to argue was probably not necessary. We had fiscal year 13 finished with $627 million over benchmark, and fiscal year 14 is already tracking at $281 million over benchmark through December. When the tech tax was repealed, on part of that $500 million package, Senate President Murray said at the time that the $161 million did not need to be replaced based on unanticipated excess revenue coming in. That's part one. Part two, tying the gas tax to CPI, or Consumer Price Index, has been tried and repealed in several states already, and is a flawed gauge for determining gas prices because the Consumer Price Index actually factors in the price of gas and so it's an upward repeating cycle. As gas goes up, so does CPI. And as CPI goes up in Massachusetts, so will gas. Which is why this is a regressive tax that disproportionately affects families with lower incomes, to whom this is an increase to a non-discretionary expense for their household, and will drastically affect these men and women who have to drive to work every day. All of our communities have to send kids to school on buses, and not to mention the increase in food prices and other goods due to added transportation costs. Which brings me to point 3. The main reason for repealing the linkage of the gas tax to CPI is that this is the only Massachusetts tax that will now automatically go up every year without a representative vote by the legislature. In my opinion, and held by several others, this is an abdication of our core responsibility as elected officials. When we, as legislators, are prepared to take credit for increased funding in certain parts of the budget, we also have to be prepared to take responsibility and criticism when we repeatedly go back to taxpayers again and again for increases. Therefore, I urge the committee to report H 3847 to the House for a vote for the favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I thank you very much for your testimony. We have now signed up to testify Raphael Maris. Is that correct? And it's a panel, I believe, Raphael, you want to bring up? How
We
we
can do
prefer?
2 panels, and I defer to the first panel, and I'll be on the second panel if that's okay.
That'll be fine. So it's a panel that's tested. If you could, please, as members of the panel, when they call upon you, just identify yourself. So please join, please. See, just identify yourself for the record when time is.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Richard O'Brien.
Okay.
I am here speaking on behalf of the American Council of Engineering Companies in Massachusetts.
Sir?
I'm John Corbet, I'm the Executive Director of Construction Industries in Massachusetts, a trade association that represents the heavy and highway construction industry.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, John. Please.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Rodriguez and Chairman Cobb and members of the committee for allowing us to testify here today. First of all, ACEC Massachusetts is a business association of engineering and land surveying firms in Massachusetts. Our firms are the ones that design public and private infrastructure that contributes to the economic vitality and quality of life here in the Commonwealth. We have 120 member firms employing about 7,000 people in the Commonwealth, including engineers, land surveyors, planners, and other professionals focused on public-private partnership infrastructure. As you have heard today, and are well aware, the transportation system continuously has significant needs for maintenance and repair. So it's a major investment that has been made over decades and centuries. It needs constant attention, and it's particularly critical that maintenance programs be ongoing, continuous, and reliable. As a structural engineer, I've personally seen a situation of a major bridge where the bridge was to be rehabilitated, it was inspected. Due to the funding, the construction contract did not go forward for 8 years. When the construction began 8 years later, the amount of deterioration in those steel members had accelerated to the point that the added costs to the Commonwealth and the taxpayers were much higher than the cost of inflation. So it's our position that the gas tax increase of 3 cents that took effect last year was a much needed and critical tool for an investment in public safety in our economy. And we think that the indexing is a reasonable approach because we do need to have that consistent reliability. Over the next 10 years, this gas tax will raise the funds that are needed to keep these programs going year after year, regardless of economic cycles and political changes in our state. So, as of January 2014, the Massachusetts state gas tax rate still ranks 26th in the United States. It's the lowest of all of the surrounding states, which includes New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, Vermont. The only exception is New Hampshire. And I know personally that New Hampshire is considering revenue enhancements because they're really strapped to keep that program on New Hampshire DOT. In addition, not maintaining the roads costs us even more. It's in addition to the construction cost I mentioned, it's the loss of business, it's that lack of reliability that companies like AstraZeneca need to make their investment decisions to do business here in the Commonwealth. Without the indexing, the gas tax cannot keep up with the pace of simply the rising construction costs, the materials costs, and based on historic trends, that is roughly 3.2% a year. So on behalf of ACEC Massachusetts, I urge the legislature and the voters of Massachusetts to keep us on the right track by keeping in place the indexing of the gas tax increase to keep Massachusetts moving forward. I thank you for your time.
My name is John Corbett, CRNews. And first of all, I'd like to thank the committee for their vote last year to raise revenues for transportation. It was much needed and very much appreciated. I was on the Transportation Finance Commission, and one of the mantras of that group was reform before revenue. And we monitored this extremely closely as our life work. And what we've seen is some major reforms on the part of MassDOT. We've seen the turnpike eliminated. We've seen the MBTA health and pension plans reformed. We've seen the use of flaggers allowed. We have that on time, on budget projects are getting done much quicker, much faster, on time, on budget. And in fact, MassDOT has won several awards in the past couple of years, national awards for their innovation, and that was really has been a direct result of the online legislation. Based on that, there was strong consensus that we needed additional revenues for our transportation system, and we were very happy to see the gas tax increase in index. Without the, what we've seen over the last several years is with cars using alternative fuels, more efficiency, there's been less consumption and less revenues generated. And what we've also seen is the purchasing power of the dollar shrink every year. Materials have gone up, equipment has gone up, wages have gone up, energy, insurance have all increased. But the one thing that hadn't gone up was the gas tax. It had been raised since 1991. It went up 3 cents. We indexed it for inflation. I think the first year, the average driver will probably pay somewhere under $5 for this indexing. I think there's been a lot of misrepresentation of facts as to where the money will go. It's constitutionally protected under Article 78 of the Constitution, which says that gas tax and registry fees have to be spent on roads, bridges, and mass transit. And the other couple of things I'd just like to mention is 17 other states index their gas tax. And this past spring, the Congressional Budget Office came out with a report looking at federal highway user revenues and what to do with the shortfall. And one of their recommendations was to index the national gas tax. It's something that, like a lot of conservative groups, will look at CBO as like a Bible. Well, right in the CBO report, they recommend that the gas tax be indexed. And The other thing that I get fired if I didn't mention is right now, you know, as I said, revenues are the lifeblood of the heavy and highway construction industry. Without that, we can't put people back to work. And right now, we have in the construction industry, outside of Boston, core Boston, we still have an average of about 20% unemployment because of, there isn't a lot. We'd love to do more, but there aren't the revenues to do that. And to take another hit on the revenue side would be devastating to our industry. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Richard. For your testimony, any questions from members of the committee? Yes, Councilor Fennell.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I have a quick question. Reference the commission report on
Transportation Finance Commission.
What findings did they have on prevailing wage? Did they examine that at all?
We didn't touch it. One of the recommendations, though, from the Transportation Finance Commission was to index the gas tax. Though.
Any further questions? I thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Raphael, you want something to second?
I think we have two more on this panel.
Oh, okay. It's still panel one? Okay, Jim.
Panel one, part two.
Yeah. 1A, 1B.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Keith in the Greater Boston Chamber, thanks for your consideration. To be reported in opposition to this repeal. We were one of the organizations that strongly supported the transportation bill last year. As you know, that was a consensus bill. That was a lot of pieces put together, some pieces more popular than others, not an easy bill to craft, but very important for transportation and for the economy. We believe the gas tax is one of the best and most effective ways to finance transportation. It comports with the user pays principle. As roads are used, as people drive on roads, wear and tear creates the need for repair. The gas tax finances those. As was previously noted, gas tax proceeds go into the dedicated transportation fund. They don't get used for other things in the state budget, adding to the arguments for relying on the gas tax. And finally, as has been noted, indexing enables the gas tax to keep up with the increasing costs of road maintenance and road upgrading we see over time. If we had indexing in place a long time ago, we would not have had to go through the protracted struggle we did last year to pass the transportation bill. So with that, we support indexing. We recommend against the repeal legislation and appreciate your consideration.
Thanks, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Justin. I'm the Government Affairs Manager at Better City, and our CEO, Rick Camino, sends his apologies for not being able to make it. So I'm here on behalf of he and our members. And again, just want to emphasize how important this legislation was that you all worked so hard to pass, and how appreciative we are of your leadership and efforts, and how much this stands to undermine that initiative and hard work that you all put in last year. Just a couple of quick additions. The indexing alone by itself is projected to raise, this is from the Department of Revenue, $1 billion over the next 10 years for transportation, and that's a significant amount of resources and funding that would be undermined by if this petition were adopted. Just in terms of jobs and the economy, some economic experts that we worked with did some research before you all acted and passed your legislation. Massachusetts was facing job losses of up to 15,000 over the next decade and a half, and as much as $11 billion in increased operating and safety costs due to a deteriorating transportation network. So we definitely want to keep going in the right direction and keep moving forward with the progress that you all have made, and we don't want to be stepping back and moving backward. And just one other point that I want to emphasize, that the indexing is projected, as John mentioned, to cost the average driver less than $3 per month over, when it's in place. And MassInc polling group did some research, and they found that 60% of Massachusetts residents were willing to pay up to $50 more per year, as long as they knew that the money was going to help roads and public transit. So again, we just want to come here and commend you for all the hard work that you put in to getting this legislation passed, and to express our opposition to repeal the indexing.
Thank you very much for your testimony. questions from members of the committee? Seeing none? Thank you for your testimony. Is this 2A or is it just one position?
Just two.
Just two. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Rafael Maris. I'm the staff attorney with the Conservation Law Foundation. I'd like to thank the chairman and the members of this committee for the opportunity to testify today. CLF is a regional environmental organization, and CLF has worked on supporting an accessible and affordable and sustainable transportation system for decades. And so this issue is of great importance to the organization and its members. Simply put, the Commonwealth cannot afford to lose revenue from indexing the gas tax. I know that I spend a lot more time looking at transportation budgets than other people, but I do know that at this point, many people in Massachusetts understand how chronically underfunded our transportation system has been, and I appreciate all the good work that happened last year, and CLF is deeply involved in that, increasing the revenue for transportation. That said, that bill was not trying to resolve the whole problem in one step. It solved part of the problem and left the issue for future years, and the idea was to be able to revisit that on a regular basis. And so, having put my head into the numbers, I'd like to report to you sort of where we are a little bit to give you context for this proposal. MassDOT will face a gap of $39 million in FY15 and $74 million in FY16. This is after an increase in tolls, RMB fees, and after we take the benefits or the savings from automatic electronic tolling into account, Massport contributions, and casino licensing fees. The MBTA is clearly in a better financial position, but it's still going to face a gap of $8 million, $36, $38 million, and $79 million per year over the next 4 years, respectively. Even after it increases its fares by 5% every 2 years, the maximum now allowed by the law. The regional transit authorities, their budgets have been stabilized more, but there was never an intent to fully fund them. The idea was to look at long-term needs through a comprehensive service planning process and determine what the actual need is. There's no question that will be need for additional funding. It's not a question of whether there is such a need, but it's a question of how much that need will be, and we will know more relatively soon. So without indexing the gas tax, the Commonwealth would lose almost $60 million in FY18 alone, and in total, I think this number has been mentioned before today, of $1 billion over the next 10 years. Indexing the gas tax is hardly new to Massachusetts, as some will have you believe. Until 2000, the cost of the gas tax was tied to the price of gasoline, and as a result, went up with inflation. And had it still been in place last year, it would have generated $170 million. That would have taken care of a good number of headaches here at the State House and across the state. It's also not unique in any way. 15 other states index the gas tax either to the price or to CPI, and over half of those, 8 of them actually, are considered red states. The other 7 are blue states, so with Massachusetts, it's 50-50. There aren't a lot of bipartisan policies around anymore. We're looking at one right here. So with all these financial gaps and critical needs to meet, I think it would be irresponsible to repeal the indexing of the gas tax. And I strongly recommend that this committee recommend that this initiative petition or this bill doesn't pass. And I'm open to answer any questions now or provide any additional information afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lizzie Wine. I'm the Advocacy Director of Transportation for Massachusetts. We are a statewide coalition of 36 organizations from around Massachusetts dedicated to supporting investments that create safe, affordable transportation choices for everyone here in the Commonwealth. We are a very diverse coalition. Some of our groups are committed to transportation investments because they care about the environment or the economy or smart growth or civic engagement. And one thing we actually familiar with the work of our coalition through, we work so closely with you and your colleagues in the Transportation Financing Act this year. We are so grateful for the investments that this legislation made. Collectively, our coalition represents 100,000 Massachusetts residents. We have one short message today. With continued insufficient funding, we have a chance to create a robust 21st century transportation system. But if we lose even 1 cent of the funds dedicated to transportation, we will fail to meet the needs of residents in every corner of our Commonwealth. And accordingly, we oppose H347. Though the proponents of this question have led voters to believe otherwise, as you've heard, gas tax is constitutionally protected and dedicated to transportation, and we need every single penny. We are 45th in the nation for infrastructure. Our roads and bridges are falling apart. This leads to congestion, long traffic delays, and reduced quality of life. The MBTA still has the highest debt load in the country, and yet it serves 1 million passengers a day. And there are often no public transportation options in other corners of Massachusetts. We are also home to over 500 structurally deficient bridges. We can't risk the safety of residents by failing to repair them. It is irresponsible. This year, you made a significant investment in transportation in order to better meet our statewide needs. And sitting here before you today, I represent over 100,000 people who agree with your vote and who understand that we cannot hold back the progress that we are making. Without enough money, we will move backwards. We will be stuck in traffic. We will spend more on auto repairs. We will drive on roads and bridges that are unmaintained and maybe even unsafe. We can't afford for this to become a reality. We have transportation needs in every corner of our Commonwealth, and we must have enough money to meet those needs today and tomorrow. We urge you to maintain a provision that will index the gas tax to inflation and allow us to keep pace with those needs.
Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Tom Philbin from Mass Municipal Association. We represent some 350, 351, depending on the year, towns in Massachusetts. I want to start out real quick just by thanking you, all of you, and folks on the Transportation Committee and leadership for really taking a difficult vote last year.